The armed conflicts in Sierra Leone began in 1991 when the Revolutionary United Front, RUF, led by Corporal retired Fode Sebana-Sanko and supported by the forces of a rebel group in Liberia led by Charles Taylor, made its first incursions from Liberia into Bomaro, Kailaun district. This was a revolution against the government of President Joseph Saidu Momo.
So this is the starting of the war in Salone from 1991, March 23rd. So na a very crucial day where all them problems they all get so today now from there it starts. And really till to January 6th, like Emio they talk to you, 1999, January 19, na the rebellion caught me and we move na tongue. I'm all 15 years.
Now somewhere now they hold me. And at that time I been there around 12 years. Yes, because we didn't can hold me. They think that because then don't they ever think say this war will come to an end. So their main aim at that time now for let them get a kind of reinforcement with if the war really continue, like we win in the cage, then they go try for like recruit we into the team, then they teach you how to use weapon, like the AK-47, then show you how to use them, they show you how to strip and assemble them. So then train them, then they pass them you, then they show you again how to escape, like they can't attack on. So some of them basic things and they then get for pass them to me.
Well, because we see the evidence of what happened, where the war caused people, then they cut their hand, then burn houses, then some man crazy, some man they rape them. We get picking them today when as a result of the rape where they rape their mama there, they not even get daddy there. All them kind of thing and they now negative, bad thing the way happen at the country. So you not go find for like it happen again because today, like we where they do their community engagement there, we can go some communities also get them polio there, where then they explain their experiences, the way they get do the war, how them cut them, foot them, how them cut them, and they rape them, picking them before then they rape the woman there, then please post in belly. You know go find out get them kind of experience there again as a country. Because it's very, very disheartening and it's very sad.
I just want to summarize the whole conflict as one thing we make normally say it be full with fogs of lies. By that I mean the conflict at Salone we not be really know who that do voting, who that do this, who that go attack that village, waiting happen. Because before the war, we don't live before the war, now village more. We know say it takes the village for raise a child. If begin to go school, you see old person taught. Those days, you left what you do for EPA. So now a community be raised picking. But what thing go wrong we make? You know, we turn against each other. You know, we picking them, we give them guns, we give them drugs. They want them for protect. We parents them for protect, put it that set the house on fire.
On April 29th, 1992, a military junta headed by Captain Valentine Strasser and later Captain Julius Madabio staged a coup during which they commenced negotiations with the RUF. Two peace agreements were signed in 1996, Abidjan Peace Accord, and later in 1999, the Lomé Peace Agreements. These agreements provided a controversial amnesty for perpetrators of atrocities on all sides of the conflicts. Different actors participated in the war, including the RUF, the militias who aligned with the Republic of Sierra Leone Armed Forces. The war was officially declared over in January 18, 2002, after which the government of Sierra Leone established a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC.
We expect much, especially to the government of the Republic of Sierra Leone. This day is a very great day. We don't see lot of celebration. Holiday them put them like Armed Forces Day, Child Day, Women's Day. But we look at and say, then 3 days they are, from March 23rd, January 6, January 18, government for them look at one great day, then declare a public holiday. Because today, what's in our biggest problem in our country, people are not asked for forget. And we look at and say, plenty people they can forget about the war. When they celebrate that day, any single Sierra Leonean, any businessman, any minister, any government parastatus, you go aware say, go draw your attention, which will don't happen in this country.
The TRC report are the best document we get as a nation. We try for catalog what we go through during the 11 years. We talk about the the pre-period, like even the colonial period, what's responsible for the atrocities they did.
Definitely, I think some of the factors we then been report inside the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, many of those things we're not able to address them yet as a country. I think, say, Migo give the biggest responsibility in that to the political class, those of us who say that we are interested, and for me the definition of the political class, now all those who have influence and power, whether they're inside or outside of the government, because many of we political actors, those who have influence and authority and the ability to bring about change, they never take formal public positions, then can they outside in the back influencing things in the wrong way. And I believe, say, that political class, they not ever accept their own share of responsibility.
As a major transitional justice pillar through the enactment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission Act 2000. The commission was mandated under Section 6 of the TRC Acts, among other things, to create an impartial historical antecedents of the war, keeping records of violations and abuses of human rights and international humanitarian law related to the armed conflict in Sierra Leone. From the beginning of the conflict in 1991 to the signing of the Lome Peace Agreement to address impunity, to respond to the needs of victims, promote healing and reconciliation, and to prevent a repetition of the violations and abuses suffered. The Commission concluded its work in October 2004 and issued a report in 4 volumes. A child-friendly version of it was co-produced by UNICEF and the Human Rights Section of UNAMSIR and the then UN peacekeeping missions in Sierra Leone. The reports clearly underscored both internal and external factors which precipitated the conflicts, including years of bad governance, endemic corruption, and denial of basic human rights.
President Kaba, in particular, was very concerned that, we not build a culture of victimhood and a culture whereby people they get paid for their suffering. He been believed, say, we forget community reparations, do things for the whole community, create opportunities for let those who suffered the most, then say could be able for come in and be reintegrated. I think, say, unfortunately, even the community reparations, then we not see them through. And because of so many reasons, the fact that there were not the funds available coming from the donors, and again, this political class, the successive governments, they not take we own national funds for put on towards doing something about the situation of those who had suffered most, those who are most vulnerable. We not address the issue.
The TRC recommend where successive governments don't implement, I would say most of them, but because they implement them in isolation, they not get any link with the TRC recommendation. it make it difficult for people to associate the repeal or the steps then within the context of transitional justice, within the context of healing the wounds from the conflict. Take for example, the most recent one, the death penalty. Now be one of the recommendations. The libel laws, now be part of the recommendations. The law reform, now be part of the recommendations. Land rights, now part of the recommendations. The need for overhaul the judiciary, now part of the recommendations. The special fund for war victims. These are all very good recommendations, but most of them happen within the context like projects. So people were not able to explain to Pikine, say they review the law because this law be lead to war. They review this because now this thing, according to the TRC, be responsible for the conflict. We will not do that as a nation. However, some of that happen. So that's not a big gap. Another issue where I go highlight now, even the special fund for war victims. You talk about the amputees and war wounded. Some of we champion their cause in this country. I take them to the highest level. Even at the General Assembly. With President Kabar. By then he did a General Assembly in our UN. I lead a delegation with the then chairman for the amputee and war wounded. I traveled and go to Germany, we go to Geneva, we go to London, we engage the government there, the German government, BMZ, we go to Geneva, the embassies there, say, look, when I talk to the government, may they implement the recommendations there. At least may they look into the welfare of the war victims. Unfortunately, as I said earlier, the building of schools, yes, the development program, all you see certainly don't change. But they don't link up. Reparations, not a symbolic process. Not for build school, you say you call them community reparations. No. Now the process leading to the building of the school, how involved are the people? Now the people that need that, I be work with the government, we're able to raise the initial seed money. When I be initially $3 million, we will raise, we hand them over to NACSA for me to go implement the special fund for war victims and the reparations program. And me not be a part of the committee, but I think that one of the biggest challenge where I will live with for a long time. Because we suggest to NACSA and the government by then, say, look, reparations according to the TRC report, Nigeria for deal with you for a very long time. The one they were believed during the war, remember that young lady, when I be 6 months old, they amputated her. The TRC recommend, say, war victims for receive educational support up to tertiary level. So compare 6 months to 2 years by then, how long it will take for it to tertiary to university. So, but the reparations program not be go beyond, and I even think it do beyond 10 years. And they declare and say it don't close. So as I say, maybe one biggest challenge that we raise the money, we make some recommendations, we even suggest a tax from the mining companies, a percentage, because we almost say they use the proceeds from the mining sector for fuel-the-war. So we campaign say the mining community for able to contribute, even if through the license or whatever, like 0.5%. Now, Bokumani, if you put on a fund annually for taking care of the war victims, the recommendations the way the TRC come up with, war victims, amputees them, they're not for paying a government boss. They forget cards them, we for give them access to government boss. Nothing they will for able for pass on to picking them. This woman, this man not paying a boss because of like a victim. So these are some of the challenges them. But overall, as a nation, we believe say we move forward, but not within the spirit of the TRC recommendations.
The Council of Churches in Sierra Leone, CCSL, is an integral part of the Interreligious Council that served as moral guarantors during the peace negotiations. After the disarmament and demobilization of ex-combatants, other CPS partners, MADAM, SLOIC, YMCA, YWCA, and SLADIA focus on capacity building, on adult literacy, and vocational trade. They train many ex-combatants and victims of the war in diverse skills. These, though not limited, include catering, mechanic, plumbing, dressmaking, weaving, numeracy, and literacy. The trainees were able to acquire skills and eventually engage in some form of social enterprising.
In the first place, CCSL began playing a role when the war was still in Liberia and until the time we spill over to Sierra Leone. For that then and there, at the time we provide humanitarian assistance, whether in the form of food and non-food items, medical assistance for refugees from Liberia, and then for multitudes of internally displaced persons.
Before the declaration of the war done, we be engaged in that aspect of getting the child soldiers from the fighting forces and getting them rehabilitated through various programs. For example, psychosocial counseling and trauma healing programs, and later, once we don't able to stabilize them, which I call stabilization, then we think of very concrete programs for get them back to integrated into society.
We seize that opportunity for begin talk peace, broker peace between the rebels and the government and the people of Sierra Leone. Because we all know that in war times, that the ordinary man, woman, and Pekin that they suffer most. Will intervention in the form of humanitarian assistance be necessary, useful, and helpful to the people? Who will see for bring lasting peace could be the most sustainable solution. And so we go in for that. And realizing our own network and our strength, we mobilized our various member churches for beginning talk to the congregations. And we must note that in this country, the churches are all over. There's hardly any chiefdom in Sierra Leone where they go to, any big town where they go to where they meet a church, or any village where they meet a Christian. And so we use that network to reach out to our people. Even the ones fighting, they belong to religion, they belong to churches. And so we made our appeals across the board. Because of the nature of our country being highly religiously tolerant, we also approach our counterparts in the Muslim faith for we come together and using our two networks of Muslims and Christians, we came together to form the Inter-Religious Council so that we'll get a broader and bigger appeal. We'll go reach a wider network of all Christians and all Muslims and the powers that be and the rebels in this country. So that we used as a strategy for let we able and begin address the areas of peace building and reconciliation.
SLADI have been getting great fortune for work with the Interreligious Council of Sierra Leone, when they spearhead peace building in civil society circles.
After the war, officially they don't declare the war ended. A very big disarmament program, maybe the famous DDR program where everybody know about. The government and donor partners then been put together that program. It was a very big, massive program for disarm thousands and thousands of combatants we fought during the war. And once they don't disarm them, then they begin to demobilize them. The next process will be to reintegrate them into society. Madam been get for play a very big role in that. We've been designing various training programs for the combatants them way them be just don't released, and there will be the work with several partners. Of course, the NCDDR program was be one of the partners they all been the work with, and of course the big Bread for the World. We've been get vocational training programs, trauma healing programs. We've been get psychosocial counseling programs, and we be even get programs on school support for the one them we really want to go back to schools. We'll be able to successfully combine bringing together the ex-combatants as well as the displaced people in Mile 91. And you can imagine how that was. Because on one hand, the combatants, everybody perceived them as the perpetrators. And the young girl, they have always been there in the refugee camps, the displaced camps. They were like victims. But we bring them together, and this was where, in our view, the healing process starts right from there. Perpetrators and the victims coming together, pursuing a common goal for go back and reintegrate into their society. So it was a very successful program.
2002, we been get various professionals from Bread for the World, at that time na EED, we come for work with we on development programs. But it's been very difficult for them partners then where they work with EED and Bread for the World for go back na the communities, for go start their development programs. So we been need for, first of all, tackle the peaceful coexistence of we project participants before we go start the development work proper. It been just appropriate at that time for let we get a program where they try for integrate peace building or peace work into with development work where we they do before the war. So early in the post-war years, we talk with all Bread for the World funded partners and ED funded partners because they were two different organizations at that time. We asked ourselves, within the peace approaches with the various NGOs then they use. When we don't establish the various approaches with the various Bread for the World and ED partners they use, we say how we go improve on that for we build a very good foundation. A good foundation in the sense that bringing the victims of war, perpetrators of war, and even those who are displaced and wanting to return back into their communities. So then three groups then we want for work with them for then start development in their communities. We had inherited communities with very shattered lives. CPS, when we introduced them in Sierra Leone, the partners embraced them because there been opportunity for we get traditional and indigenous ways of peace building developed, in addition to bringing in professionals we've been called civil peace service professionals who worked with the various partners to virtually give a very strong foundation so that for render the organization here in the first place and the communities wherein they work conflict sensitive. This na been we focus. This na been we goal. When we do any program now on moving forward, CPS the support we for let we become as partners or community development initiators. When we go to a community, we for be conflict sensitive. Conflict sensitive means gender sensitivity. And we start all down the working with various professionals. We Bread for the World and ED at that time send for the various partners and we work because it been better for we for work with somebody we not get the same traumatic experience like we, the Sierra Leoneans. We don't go through 11 years of war. We all been get with own kind of trauma. But somebody was coming from outside, for can join we and work with we, for we they work on with personal trauma then and go over and work with the devastation with the communities and don't suffer. For let them come together. Me, I've been there as Executive Secretary of SLADIA and coordinator for the Civil Peace Service partners. The Civil Peace Service work will be always the meet, and the biggest strength we get from the Civil Peace Service program have been the training them, with the build with capacity in peace building. No partner not been there specifically in peace building before the war. But when in the wars of freedom players, peace catch we be need for promote this peace na all we communities. Before the community now peaceful, they not go able for respond to you development approaches where they can with. So this have been the beginning of Civil Peace Service support to Bread for the World and ED partners in Sierra Leone. A lot of partners find them very useful because when they're exposed to trainings relating to trauma healing, mediation, mediative skills, and how you build a foundation with people who don't become peaceless for a long period of years. The perpetrator, we being born with house, we being killed members of the family, they are coming back to settle down in the community. SLADIA had classes all over the country. But when you go to set up a class, you don't exclude ex-combatants, you don't exclude those coming in as displaced people returning, you don't exclude those who were victims. Everybody come for literacy. And when they sit together, you see the frequent outbreak of conflict within the class, within the development planning process, within the development activities that take place. And those were hindrances. But as soon as we are able to master skills of entering into the communities, we're very conflict sensitive. We're aware of what will make the various actors then go get into some hyper or the situation will become volatile. We know how to manage them, and we'll be able to start development again after the war.
20 years after the war was officially declared over, and the Civil Peace Service network of Bread for the World in Sierra Leone will take stock of the progress made over time. The process will take note of experiences from key factors that have played their own part during the lifespan of the reconciliation process.
We don't do quite a lot, and varying impacts. You go feel them, you go sense them at the communities where we do. I will begin with SLADIA. SLADIA used the Civil Peace Service program for introduce peace education as part of the curriculum for our literacy program. Luckily, that worked very well because the Civil Peace Service professional will be there with you at that time, Katarina Schilling, introduced mediative skills to all the facilitators and other peace building skills, and that may help a lot. There were NGOs or Bread for the World partners like Madam, when them get expertise already working with traumatized victims, and then victims and we continue for work with them until then we're able for kind of rehabilitate them for staying at the communities in a sane way with sanity.
20 years on, how far are we as a country?
We need for bring these things into our consciousness. If 20 years ago, 25 years ago, mudslides, something nobody not before see them. Boku of the thing and then fire, that Wellington. Nobody no go see. All man they afraid for talk. They know they feel say if we not talk them, you know they be. You know, so we they safeguard the people with power. For let them go before say, I not be no, not so be, we not be no, you know, I not be, and nobody not tell me. So if we document, we able to share with children because they don't know. Me on picking them always, then they ask me what happened during the war, what happened during the war. I can show them things, you know, this is what happened, this and you know, then thing and they.
Well, just like how they say no more. Some of the reasons that we been caused the war, one of them will be unemployment. I think say still today we still got unemployment, but that they not go hands possible for say you go na bush.
Looking at corruption, looking at this regionalism, looking at inflation of prices, looking at tribalism, we been bring kind of war. Then things then still we see them at the country.
So waiting the young people and some of them don't decide now for let them go into drugs and go into alcohol, then go into them violence business. We they see them the way they happen. Some young people because of desperation, some man left this country, some man say you know able for land, you know able for pass the was go university, some man say you know get nothing way they do because of the expectations some of them.
There is no way with them things that disappear because but then things that them bring kind of war, they never disappear. We still see them. You know, though I was a small boy, then and day the rebel have been catch me, but then things and they they pass me age because yes I be the follow up. Though I was a small boy, but like I been just to one know about things that will happen.
Generally, we they think say 20 years down the line, it's no longer important to talk about the war anymore. But I think there are still issues from the war where we're not able to address it. And I think it's very important that we find the time for continue to talk about anything. Because most times they talk about the war and all of that, people they say, it's 20 years now. But then, even if it is 20 years, if those issues are still there, I think we for continue to talk about them and look for ways of addressing them.
So 20 years after the war, you know, yes, Sierra Leone peaceful. You know, they make gains like the global peace index. We still get some of the things that will lead to the war with we as a nation. We still get some of the issues that way, if we not address them properly, anything can happen. We don't see how picking them, the schools there, the youth in the country, where, you know, statistically, they are over half of the population. You know, with all due respect to we picking in the country. Now, small things make the vex.
What are the appeal to the government of the Republic of Sierra Leone, especially Excellency, the President, Julius Maada Bio? We want to tell and say government na continuity process. And in a part of we say now all it don't suffer. And let we look, we constrain how we suffer now. Let able go all out. Let them go able declare a public holiday for we. This is number one. Then a firm day like January 18, where they declare say war done. Someone want go na bush cave for go create problem. They go make up in mind say no, something don't happen in this country. People they don't lost their part, they lost their life, they lost their property. Like nothing not happen again in this country. Number two. According to TRC recommendation, forget small things we get to government. Then we go able manage your life with picking them. We able manage life with your family. Once let the government go into the drawing board, then they go able implement them for we. That's go better for we. Then we then a street for going beka no more. The number three, we they break the government. We they talk to the government and international community. Today, yes, we get free education. But when you look at her, me not get an. Some of you picking them down, almost down, get the qualification for going to university. But when you look at university, college, then at the country, automatically, like me, I'm not going to pay for me picking. So if the government would draw the attention of the government for them to go able to help we, let them give scholarship to we picking them. Let them go to university. That could make, if they want to get any bad determination for revenge, for vex, if they get better education and get better work, no. Then get for help to marry, then go help for help other people them. That you not going to brainwash them for say, I go do so thing for your papa.
respect one another.